Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! I work as a security systems technician, installing and maintaining CCTV cameras and alarm systems across the city. It's honest work that keeps me busy, though it means I'm constantly driving around to different locations with my van full of equipment. I've been doing this for about 8 years now, ever since I finished my electrical apprenticeship. The job has its perks. I get to work independently most of the time, and I've built up good relationships with my regular clients. One of my regular contracts is with a popular bar in the northern part of the city. The place does well for itself, especially on weekends, but they've had ongoing issues with their location. They're situated right next to the Social Security Benefits office, which means their private car park constantly gets used by people who don't want to pay for proper parking. The bar owner got so fed up with this that he installed locking drop-down bollards at the entrance to keep unauthorized vehicles out. The bollards aren't fancy automatic ones, just manual ones that you have to physically lift and lower. The bar owner gave me a full set of keys since I'm there regularly for maintenance work. The routine is always the same: park on the street, walk over and drop the bollards while getting soaked because the pits they sit in always fill with rainwater, then drive my van into the car park and raise the bollards again to keep others out. This morning I was scheduled to oversee a scaffold installation. The bar needed some old CCTV cameras removed from the back of the building and replaced with newer, higher quality ones. The cameras were mounted pretty high up, so we needed proper scaffolding to reach them safely. The scaffold team was running about 20 minutes behind me, which gave me time to grab a quick coffee from the shop around the corner. I pulled up outside the bar and went through my usual routine, got out of my van, walked over to the bollards, and dropped them down. When I was walking back to move my van into the car park, this guy in a shiny BMW X5 suddenly appeared and drove straight into the car park, parking like he owned the place. I followed him in with my van and parked next to him. I could see through his windscreen that he was on a hands-free phone call, talking animatedly to someone. I walked over and tapped politely on his window to get his attention. I told him politely that this was a private car park and he needed to move his car. He just looked at me and waved his hand dismissively, like I was some annoying fly buzzing around his head. He kept talking on his phone, completely ignoring me. I waited a moment, then tapped on his window again. He rolled his window down just long enough to shout angrily that he was on a phone call, then immediately rolled it back up and turned away. I stood there for a moment, considering my options. I could have been really malicious and raised the bollards to lock him in, but I'm not that type of person. Instead, I decided to just leave the bollards down so he could leave when he finished his important call, and I went around the corner to get my coffee. I took my time at the coffee shop, figuring he'd be gone by the time I got back. But when I returned about 5 minutes later, coffee in hand, there he was, still in his car, still on his phone. I could see the scaffold lorry making its way up the hill toward us, so I knew I needed to sort this out quickly. I walked over and tapped on his window again. I explained that I really needed him to move because we had a delivery coming and needed the space. He didn't even roll down his window this time, just mouthed angrily for me to get lost. Fine. If that's how he wanted to play it, I wasn't going to waste any more energy trying to be reasonable with him. The scaffold lorry arrived and I gestured for them to reverse into the car park. The driver looked at the BMW and raised his eyebrows questioningly, but I just nodded and pointed to where I wanted them to park. The lorry completely blocked the car park entrance, with Kevin's BMW trapped behind it. 3 scaffolders jumped out, all of them big, muscular guys who clearly spent their days hauling heavy metal bars around. They started unloading their equipment without even acknowledging Kevin's presence. I watched in fascination when they began assembling the scaffold with practiced efficiency, throwing together bars and planks like they were building with oversized building blocks. The scaffold was going to be a substantial structure, about 4 levels high, running up the back of the building, made from around 50 metal bars. When they worked, the structure grew taller and more impressive. I tried to help by passing parts up to them, but I quickly realized I was more hindrance than help since I had no idea what I was doing. About 10 minutes into the build, Kevin finished his phone call and got out of his car. He looked at the scaffold lorry blocking his exit, then at the growing metal structure, then walked off toward the Social Security office. I assumed he thought we'd be finished by the time he got back, and he could just drive away. Nearly an hour passed. The scaffold kept growing taller and wider, and the lorry gradually emptied when the scaffolders moved their equipment. They were getting close to finishing, but there was still one more level to go on top, and the higher they got, the slower the work became for safety reasons. Kevin came back after about an hour and 10 minutes. He walked straight up to me with a determined look on his face. He demanded that I let him out immediately. I told him that he wasn't going anywhere and reminded him that I had tried to tell him this was a private car park, but he had told me to get lost. He said angrily that he didn't care about any of that and ordered me to move the truck immediately. I explained that it wasn't my truck and that we would be done when we were done. I added that he should have listened when I tried to talk to him politely earlier. That's when he lost it completely. He shoved me hard in the chest, sending me stumbling backward. The three scaffolders immediately stopped what they were doing and climbed down from their perches. These guys were intimidating even when they were being friendly. When they looked angry, they were downright scary. One of the scaffolders asked if there was a problem. Kevin took one look at them and seemed to shrink into himself. He mumbled something under his breath and retreated to his car, where he sat making phone calls. About 10 minutes later, two police officers arrived. The first officer walked over to me while the second one started looking around the scene. The officer explained that they had received a report about someone being blocked in and threats being made, and asked me to explain what was happening. I explained the whole situation from the beginning, how this was a private car park, how I'd tried to ask Kevin politely to leave, how he'd been rude and dismissive, and how he'd pushed me when the scaffolders intervened. I mentioned that since this was a bar, the whole incident would be captured on their CCTV system. I explained that I was there on legitimate business, had keys to the property and permission to use the car park, and that I had tried to resolve this peacefully, but Kevin had chosen to ignore me and then became aggressive. The scaffolders backed up my story, and we all provided our details and company information. Meanwhile, the second officer was taking a very close look at Kevin's BMW, walking around it slowly and peering through the windows. The first officer asked the scaffolders if they could move their lorry to let Kevin out. They agreed, though it took them a few minutes to secure their equipment properly. The police officer told us off a bit, explaining that it was technically an offense to knowingly block someone in, even on private property. Kevin got into his BMW looking smug and started reversing toward the exit, but when he cleared the gates, the second officer gestured for him to pull over on the road and get out of the car. That's when things got really interesting. After some questioning, it turned out that Kevin had been driving without road tax, without insurance, and without even having a valid driving license. The reason the police had to let him drive out of the car park was because technically no crime was being committed while he was just sitting there. But the moment he attempted to drive on a public road, he was breaking multiple laws. The officer arrested Kevin for driving without a license, without insurance, and without valid road tax. Kevin protested angrily that it was ridiculous and that we had blocked him in. The officer explained that those were separate matters, but right now he was in violation of the Road Traffic Act. I watched when the second officer got into Kevin's BMW and drove it away to the impound yard. Kevin was left standing on the pavement, looking absolutely furious but completely powerless. The officer told Kevin that he would need to make his own way home, and that the vehicle would be held until he could provide proof of insurance and someone with a valid license came to collect it. Kevin started walking toward the bus stop, pulling out his phone to make what I assumed would be a very unpleasant call to someone. The scaffolders and I got back to work, and we finished the job without any further drama. Later that week, I ran into the bar owner, and he filled me in on the rest of the story. Apparently, Kevin had to pay over $1,100 in impound fees and fines. I started working as a cashier supervisor at one of Canada's biggest pharmaceutical malls about a year and a half ago. At 19, some people don't take me seriously because of my age, but I've proven myself in this role. Being one of the few brown-skinned employees here, I get the occasional racist comment, mostly from shoplifters trying to deflect when they get caught. It comes with the territory, and I've learned not to let it bother me. The job is straightforward. I supervise the cashiers, handle difficult customers, and make sure everything runs smoothly during my shifts. My boss, the mall owner, and I have developed a good working relationship over the past 18 months. He's always been fair to me and treats all his employees with respect. I live just a 4-minute walk from work, which is convenient. On March 17th, 2021, I had the day off, but the weather was nice for this time of year. It was sitting at about 1 degree Celsius, which might sound cold to some people, but in our city, where winter temperatures can drop to -50, this felt like spring. I decided to take advantage of the pleasant evening and go for a walk. When I was passing by the mall anyway, I figured I might as well grab some snacks. I went inside around 5 o'clock in the evening, chatted with my co-workers who were still on shift, and picked up some chips and other snacks. I paid at the pharmacy till in the back of the mall, and when I didn't have far to walk, I didn't bother taking any plastic bags. I just carried everything in my hands. I said goodbye to everyone and left through the front entrance, starting my short walk home. That's when everything went wrong. I heard the screech of tires behind me, and suddenly a car pulled up right in front of me, so close I thought it was going to hit me. I jumped back, my heart racing from the near miss. The driver's door swung open, and out stepped this middle-aged woman with that look in her eyes that every retail worker learns to recognize. She yelled at me to stop. Out of pure habit from working customer service, I immediately switched into my professional voice and asked how I could help her. The woman accused me of not paying for the items in my hands. Then she made a racist comment about how I wasn't in my country and shouldn't steal. That comment hit me like a slap in the face. I told her that I had already paid for my stuff. She demanded to see my receipt. This is where I realized I'd made a mistake. Instead of taking a paper receipt, I'd had it emailed to me. But more importantly, I was getting angry at her racist assumption. I asked her if she worked at the store, and if not, told her I didn't need to show her any receipt. I knew she didn't work there because I would have recognized her. She claimed that she did work there and demanded again to see my receipt. I asked her where her uniform was. Karen claimed she was an undercover security guard whose job was to stop people like me who steal in other people's countries. The racism was getting worse by the minute. I decided to call her bluff. I told her to call the manager because I wanted to speak to her manager about her reckless driving. She said I had to talk to her because she was the one in charge. I'd had enough. I turned around and started walking away, hoping to avoid making a bigger scene in the parking lot. She started screaming for security, claiming I was stealing. Now everyone in the parking lot was staring at me. I turned back and sarcastically pointed out that I thought she was supposed to be undercover security. The actual security guards approached us. These guys knew me well when I worked there. I told them nothing major was happening, but joked that I didn't know the mall owner had hired new undercover security. Before the guards could respond, Karen claimed she had been working there for 6 months and that I wasn't allowed in the store anymore. That's when I decided to have some fun with this situation. I pulled out my phone and called my boss. I told him I wouldn't be able to work tomorrow. He asked what happened and if everything was all right. I explained that I guessed I wasn't allowed in the store anymore because the new undercover security guard had accused me of stealing and banned me from the premises. My boss sounded confused and asked what I meant. I could see the confusion starting to creep across Karen's face when she realized something wasn't adding up. Karen frantically denied that I worked there, saying she had never seen me and that I was lying. My boss said he was on his way to the store. Karen turned to the security guards and asked why they didn't arrest me. I explained to her that Canadian law doesn't allow citizen arrests unless there's assault or battery involved. One of the guards finally spoke up and told Karen that I had been working there as a supervisor for the last year and 6 months. Karen insisted that everyone was lying and that she had never seen me there before. I started to tell her that I wouldn't have had problems with her asking for my receipt if she hadn't made racist comments about my country. But I got interrupted when my boss arrived. My boss asked what was going on. I explained everything that had happened, from her nearly hitting me with her car to her racist comments about people like me stealing in her country. My boss's face got darker with every detail. He told Karen that she was being racist toward his employee and that he wouldn't tolerate it. He mentioned that he knew she got all her medications from the pharmacy, but from that point forward, she was banned from the store. He warned her that if she stepped on the private property again, he would have her arrested for trespassing. Karen tried to defend herself by saying she was just asking for my receipt because she thought I was stealing. My boss replied that he wouldn't have had problems if she had simply asked for a receipt, but her racist behavior toward me was completely unacceptable. What happened next was the most satisfying part of the whole ordeal. My boss pulled out his phone and called Karen's doctor right there in front of everyone. He told the doctor that he needed Karen's prescriptions transferred to another pharmacy because she had been banned from the store for racist behavior toward his staff. Karen's face went from pale to bright red in seconds. I honestly thought she might have a stroke right there in the parking lot. She protested that this wasn't fair and that she had been coming to the pharmacy for years. My boss told her she should have thought about that before harassing his employee with racial comments. She stood there for a few more minutes, cursing at all of us, her face getting redder by the second. Finally, she got back in her car and peeled out of the parking lot, probably to cause problems somewhere else. My boss walked me home that evening, making sure I was okay after the whole incident. The next day at work, word had spread about what happened, and my co-workers were incredibly supportive. It felt good to work somewhere that actually had my back when things got ugly. Karen would have to drive across town to get her medications from now on, all because she couldn't keep her racist thoughts to herself. I would have gladly shown her the receipt on my phone if she had asked politely, but the moment she brought race into it and made assumptions about me based on my skin color, she crossed a line that my boss wasn't willing to tolerate. I need to tell you about what happened to my sister at her job. She worked in human resources at a nursing home facility. She handled payroll and general HR duties for about 3 years. The place was run like some kind of old boys club where all the top management positions were filled by older men who seemed to do less work than everyone else but somehow got paid the most. The women who worked there constantly complained about being treated unfairly. My sister would tell me stories about female employees getting fired for ridiculous reasons while their male co-workers got raises right after. It was obvious what was happening, but nobody seemed to care about fixing it. Things were already bad, but what really set everything in motion was when they fired my sister's direct manager. This woman had broken her leg badly and needed a week off to recover. Instead of being understanding, the company decided she was unreliable and let her go. With her manager gone, the HR department was severely understaffed. My sister had to take on all the managerial responsibilities on top of her regular duties. She wasn't getting any extra pay for doing twice the work. My sister approached her boss about getting a pay increase, and she was doing everything her manager used to do plus her own job. Her boss told her they couldn't approve that right now and to just keep doing what she was doing. She asked several more times over the next month. Same answer every time. Then they hired a replacement manager at nearly double what they had been paying the woman they fired. Of course, the new hire was an older man. The really infuriating part was that this new manager didn't actually do any managing. My sister continued handling all the managerial tasks because this guy didn't even have access to the systems he needed. He never bothered asking for that access either. For 6 months, my sister tried to work with this useless manager. She would show him problems with their systems, explain payroll issues, and try to get him up to speed. She made it very clear that she was the only employee who knew how to use their payroll system and the only one with access to it. The manager regularly told her that she wasn't that important and that anyone could do what she did. He said she was completely replaceable. My sister would remind him that she was the only person there who knew how to run payroll and the only one with access to the system. He would brush off her concerns and say that wasn't a big deal because they could figure it out if they needed to. He made comments like this regularly. He acted like she was worthless while she was literally the only thing keeping the payroll running smoothly. After months of this treatment, my sister finally snapped. She had been customizing their payroll software over the years to make it work better for their specific needs. It was very different from the standard version now, and she was the only person who understood how to use it properly. She also had exclusive access to all the financial information needed to process payroll. Not even the CEO had those numbers. My sister decided to set up an automated system using her credentials that would assign her regular salary to her account each pay period. She wasn't stealing anything, just ensuring she got paid what she was owed according to her actual salary. Then she planned her exit strategy. She waited until right before a company-wide week off and right before her only co-worker left for a 2-week vacation. There would be no time to train anyone even if there was someone around to train. My sister put in her 2 weeks notice. The manager told her that was fine because they didn't need her anyway. He said he would just hire someone who actually knew what they were doing. My sister asked if he was sure about that and reminded him that she was the only one who knew how to run payroll. The manager dismissed her concerns and said how hard could it be since it was just computer stuff. She worked her final 2 weeks and left. The manager was confident he could handle everything or quickly find someone who could. 2 pay periods went by without anyone getting paid. The customized payroll system was too complex for anyone else to figure out, and nobody had access to the financial data needed to process payments. My sister was still getting paid though because they couldn't disable her automated payment system. The whole company was in chaos. Employees were furious about not receiving their paychecks. The state started investigating them for labor violations. The CEO was panicking. Finally, they swallowed their pride and called my sister. The CEO said they needed her help and asked if she could come back and fix their payroll situation. My sister told them she wasn't coming back as an employee, but she might consider consulting work. When the CEO asked what that would cost, she told them $250 per hour for 5 hours per week, and she would work from home. They agreed immediately. They were desperate and had no other options. My sister doesn't actually work those 5 hours. She wrote a script on her personal computer that processes their entire payroll with a click of a button. It takes her maybe 10 minutes each week, but they pay her for 5 hours. She's been doing this for 6 months now while working another full-time job. That sexist manager who called her replaceable and useless now has to watch her make more money working from home for a few minutes each week than he makes busting his butt at the office all day. The company learned the hard way that some employees really aren't as replaceable as they think. My sister went from being undervalued and overworked to being paid premium rates for minimal effort, all because management was too arrogant to recognize her actual worth when she was there full-time. The funniest part is that they still can't figure out how to run their own payroll system without her help. Every week they're reminded of how badly they messed up when they have to pay her consulting fees that are higher than what most of their employees make in a month. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.